The third block is the autopilot or flight director coupling status. An arrow pointing to the left indicates that the autopilot or flight director is coupled to the captain's side and will follow the commands of the captain's nav source selection. An arrow pointing to the right indicates coupling to the first officer's side. The word dual indicates the autopilot or flight director is coupled to both sides. When the touch control steering button is activated on either control wheel, a green TCS is enunciated in the right-hand block on the second line of the AFCS status display area. The left-hand block is for display of speed hold when that feature is engaged on Cat 3 capable aircraft. Now, let's turn our attention to the heart of the FMA, the lateral and vertical mode indications. These two columns display the lateral mode status in the left column and the vertical mode status in the right. The top line shows the active modes in green, and the second line shows the armed modes in cyan. To draw your attention to changes in mode status, anytime there's a change in a lateral or vertical mode, the new mode is highlighted with a green box for 7 seconds. The star following some active lateral and vertical indications, for example, heading star or localizer star, an altitude star or glide slope star, indicates that the mode has met its initial capture parameters. The star disappears when the mode is in its final hold or track phase. The AFCS lateral modes that may be displayed in the FMA's lateral active window are shown here. Each of these modes will be covered in more detail in the separate AFCS lateral modes module. However, let's take a brief look at the breakdown of how these modes are displayed. 3 of these modes are the lateral default or basic modes. They're active only when the flight director or autopilot is initially engaged or when the active lateral mode is disengaged. Some of the lateral modes can be armed to be engaged as an active mode when specific engagement parameters are met. Those modes are the ones that capture and follow radio signals or bearings as shown here. If engagement parameters are not met when these modes are selected on the FGCP, they arm and enunciate in cyan in the second row. Once the parameters are met, the cyan enunciation in the second row blanks, and the mode now enunciates green in the upper window. The 3 modes that capture and follow radio signals have an additional capture phase indicated by a star. When that mode enters its track phase, the star is removed. A typical arm through active sequence is shown here. Before we leave the lateral modes, there is one other enunciation you may see. The AFCS computer continuously monitors the aircraft speed and altitude, and in certain conditions, may limit the bank angle for any lateral mode to a maximum of 15 degrees. When this bank limit feature is active, a green load displays next to the active lateral mode on the FMA. Green limit lines are also displayed on the PFD blank scale for both low and normal or high bank limits. The AFCS vertical modes that may be displayed in the FMA's vertical active window are shown here. As with the lateral modes, each of these modes will be covered in more detail in separate AFCS vertical modes module. However, let's just take a brief look at the breakdown of how these modes are displayed. There's only one vertical default or basic mode, pitch hold. Like the lateral basic modes, it's active only when the flight director or autopilot is initially engaged or when the active vertical mode is disengaged. Two of the vertical modes can be armed to be engaged as an active mode when specific engagement parameters are met. These modes, altitude and glide slope, are the ones that capture an altitude or follow radio signal. If engagement parameters are not met when these modes are selected on the FGCP, they arm and enunciate in cyan in the second row. Once the parameters are met, the cyan enunciation in the second row blanks, and the mode now enunciates green in the upper window. Incidentally, both of these vertical modes that arm also have the additional capture phase indicated by a star. When the mode enters its hold or track phase, the star is removed. A typical arm through active sequence is shown here. Okay, let's wind up this module with a brief look at the third line of information displayed on the FMA. This line, with the exception of the approach capability displayed in the second column, displays only messages for abnormal situations, and these messages may be yellow, amber, red, reverse video, and flashing, all depending upon the severity of the alert. Abnormal trim situations in all three axes are shown as amber messages in this first column. Examples of these messages are shown here. The second column displays the approach capability when the approach button is selected on the FGCP. If AFCS Cat2 conditions are met, a green Cat2 message is displayed here. If Cat2 conditions are not met, then Cat1 is displayed. If the aircraft is Cat3 capable, Cat3 displays. The third column on the bottom row is reserved for unexpected AFCS mode changes or abnormal situations that occur for the navigation modes. Examples of these messages are shown here. And finally, the last column. This window displays messages announcing autopilot or yaw damper disengagement, approach category downgrades, and any AFCS internal failures. Examples of these messages are shown here.